Hello and welcome to another Fun Fact Friday. Today we have a bird fact. We're going to be talking about woodpeckers and their hammering process and the fact that they have a soft helmet. Now the woodpeckers belong to the family Pikidae. Pikidae is quite a large family, 240 odd species found all over the world, everywhere except the polar extremes, Australia, New Zealand, New Guinea and Madagascar. And they're quite well known. Woodpeckers, we know them for their hammering action, the fact that they're always banging against trees and making a lot of noise. And this is obviously a feeding behaviour, as well as some other things, but it's a feeding behaviour where they're kind of breaking into the tree, looking for soft wood and trying to look for invertebrates and larvae and bugs and stuff to eat. But they're not limited to bugs. There are some woodpeckers who specialise in deserts and therefore they break into cacti. But they're opportunistic. They'll eat anything: carrion, small lizards, small mammals, bird eggs, anything they can get into. But as of those 240 species that we have within the Pikidae, only about 20 of them are registered as endangered. Now in 1997, Bennett and Owens did a kind of mass survey and analysis of bird population trends, and at the time the woodpecker family, Pikidae family, had significantly fewer species or individuals at risk compared to all the other bird species, all the other bird families. But one of the endangered species that we have here in Sweden is the white-backed woodpecker, and in Sweden we only have 25 individuals according to the analysis and the surveys, but really we need 250 to make a viable population, so it's a little bit bad. The primary cause of loss and sort of this endangerment is habitat loss, so we know them to be very much involved in woodlands. As I said earlier, there's a couple species who are desert specific who work on cacti. There are a few who burrow into ground and eat termites from mounds and stuff like that. But we're going to circle back to the hammering and this feeding behaviour, because that's the interesting thing we're looking at today. So it's communicative. They use it for communicating. We've all heard it. We've all heard woodpeckers hammering in a wood, and you can hear it from a long way off, and they're very difficult to detect. They'll hammer on anything that resonates, and it's basically they're used as a territorial marking. Now each species has an individual hammer. The number of times they hit, the pause in between, the roll, the iteration, all these things, it's unique to a species. Much like birdsong. So for the woodpecker, hammering is their song. Now they do have vocal communication as well, but it's very much basic tones, screams and screeches and stuff like that. In my opinion, not the most pleasant sound. But obviously, to be smashing your nose repeatedly into a hard surface, we'd imagine to be very damaging and very problematic. So the woodpecker must have adapted to cope with this stress. So what adaptations do they have? Well, let's start with their feet and their supports. So what they have something called zygodactyl feet, which means they have two toes that point forward and two toes that point backwards on the same foot, and they kind of clamp like this. So they've got four toes on each feet, and they basically clamp. The tail has quite stiff feathers, and they push that against the tree. So now they've got clamp with the feet and a tail pushing against the tree. So that's their support. With that, they have the full movement of their head. The brain is quite small and quite smooth inside the skull, and there's very little gap. There's not a lot of cerebral fluid in the brain cavity, so it doesn't have much room to move. Also, the front and back of the inside of the skull is a soft, squishy, spongy material. But the interesting thing, and the kind of what I think is the most interesting aspect of this, their tongue. They have a very long tongue which is barbed and covered in sticky membranes, and it can extend, in the case of the greater spotted woodpecker, one of the more common ones in Britain and Sweden, the one I see a lot, it can extend 40 millimeters, about that, outside of the end of the bill, which is very long. But the tongue, I'm going to put an image up now. You can see the tongue is obviously one piece that comes out of the mouth, but then it splits into two pieces. It's like a Y shape, and those two pieces come past the nostrils, over the brain, and basically stop at the back of the head. So it basically covers the entire brain area. And this tongue, obviously, is a strong muscle, You know, the tongue is a strong muscle, and what it does is it adds another layer of cushioning to hold the brain, because the tongue's not moving when they're doing the hammering. It only once they found something that they shoot the tongue in, grab it with the barbs and the stickiness, and then pull it back out. So obviously people have looked at this from a scientific and an engineering point of view, and they worked out that of the impact when you're hitting something, the potential strain energy, only 0.3% of that is stored or it resonates within the brain. The other 99.7% of it is distributed through the body, through the feathers, through the bones, and in the joints and everything. And the beak is uniquely designed for this. So it has 3 layers to it. It basically has the bottom, the top, and then that kind of has a shell over the top layer. And the top layer of the beak is slightly longer, and it forms into this chisel shape. And it's done that by continually hammering into hard wood. And the top layer of the beak is covered in a keratin protein scales, so much like our fingernails and rhino horns. And that's why it can hammer into wood and take large and chip into wood and break down what they need to do and break into the wood. But anyway, that is the end of the fun facts. I hope you enjoyed today's fun facts about birds and the woodpecker's soft padded helmet. Of course, if you have any suggestions of what you want to look at next, if there's a species you want me to talk about or a behavior you want me to explore, does any animal glow in the dark, and I will find you examples of those who glow in the dark type thing. Drop it in the comments below, message me or anything like that. Love it if you liked my page and also the video, would be fantastic. Catch you guys in the next one. Hello and welcome to a Fun Facts Friday. Today, woodpeckers